right, everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm Chad. I'm a contributor, editor, host of the Comic Watches podcast show, and today I'm doing an interview with Jason Brubaker, who has um, a book coming out from Titan Comics. I believe it's like mid-October. It's called reMIND. And Jason, how's it going?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Well, before we get talking about the book, tell us a little bit about yourself. Your journey as a comic book reader and as a creator.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I started collecting comics in the 90s, kind of when the image boom happened. And, my first comic was by Todd McFarlane, one of the Spider-Mans, Sub-City Spider-Man, where he fights the lizard man and whatever. Uh, and it totally inspired me, totally opened my eyes to comics. And I followed all those guys over to Image Comics and wanted to be a comic artist ever since. And since then, I went to Hollywood, started working in animation and in movies and commercials. But I always had this kind of love for comics. And one day I was like, you know what? I have these ideas. Maybe I should try to do it, and see if I can do it. Look at the comics. And so 10 years after I started working professionally, I decided, okay, my free time, I'll do this. So I started working on this one called reMIND. Actually, before that, I started working on it as an animation. Spent about 7 years working on that. Realized this is cool, but it's going to take me 20 years to finish this. So a producer friend of mine suggested I make it as a comic, and that's what kind of steered me back into comics. So I started doing reMIND as a comic on my free time in between jobs, and I started getting pages done, and then I got a job at DreamWorks, and I was just like, what should I do with this? I have the dream job, but I have this comic I still want to put out. So I started putting it out as a web comic, and this is when web comics, the long form ones, were kind of new online. There wasn't a whole lot of them, and started getting a big audience that way. There was, I think at its peak, there was about 5,000 people that would read it a day, and just millions of views on this website. And then the Kickstarter came out, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to publish it. Kickstarter came out, someone suggested it, so it was a big, I don't know if this is going to work. Not many people have done this on Kickstarter. I think the highest comic raised funds were like $3,000 at the time. It was, the first year that they started. So I put the first volume on Kickstarter, and it raised 12,000. The second volume raised 107,000, and so it just kind of took on a life of its own. It's been it's all independently published, and so that was years ago. And so now when Titan was like, "Hey Jason, we want to republish all your old self-published comics," I'm like, "Yes, please," So it was a long process, self-fulfilling, like distributing it myself and marketing it myself, and now it's like it's kind of exciting to have an actual publisher. Um, lift it up and say, "Here you go, here world, take a look at this." You know, so that's
So,
that's what that's the long story.
hey, so let's hop right in. What is the premise of reMIND? We'll start there.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've pitched it at comic conventions. It's um it's a cat who has a lizard brain, trying to reclaim his lizard body is kind of the short of it. Yeah, it's his journey. He was exiled from this underwater lizard kingdom. I'm probably giving away too many spoilers here, but yeah, it's brain transplantation and all kinds of weird sci-fi stuff that I loved when I was growing up. Inspired by a lot of old books like Synthetic Men of Mars. You know, um, uh, let's see, I even have some of the books that really heavily inspired it. They're super old. Oh, maybe I don't have them on my bookshelf. But anyway, yeah, a lot of, it's like everything. You take bits and pieces from everything you love and you're inspired by it, and then it kind of naturally turns into its own thing. and then you call it your style, you know. So
So you've kind of given us, the premise. Who are the main characters that the story
yeah,
follows?
it's mainly this cat. I should show you the cover. Give me 1 second. Let me grab the actual book.
Sure.
So this was the originally hardcover published version. This is a cat named Vittles, and this is her caretaker, her owner, Sonia. She's a lighthouse keeper, and her cat goes missing, and he comes back with stitches, and she realizes this isn't my cat anymore. Who is this strange creature that's walking around and talking? And she kind of assists him in going back and confronting um, the who kind of is responsible for the situation he's in. And so that's the first book. But when Titan publishes, it'll be one volume instead of two. So yeah, so it's mainly about this following this cat, or he looks like a cat, but he's really a lizard man, an underwater lizard creature. Yeah. So
So you mentioned that you had this idea and you kind of started it years ago, and now Titan is coming back and wanting to publish it. How is it kind of for you? I guess revisiting everything.
oh yeah, it's been really interesting because I always published it with the idea that this is something that Hollywood and the comic book industry would never be interested in. So and because of that, I'm just going to self-publish it and do it the way I want to do it. And so it's interesting that that the comic industry now and book publishers are actually interested in it years later, 15 years later. This is the Titan version is the 15-year anniversary edition, and so it's kind of interesting to start to work on a new cover and work on the art. And behind me is a bunch of reMIND art because it seems like it's taken on new life in other forms as well. And so the last month I've been working on new reMIND stuff, which is to be announced someday, hopefully. Who knows? So yeah, it's just been really fun to kind of like dive back into it and kind of look at the story with fresh eyes again and see what made people fall in love with it. Because it takes, once you haven't looked at something for a long time, you look at it again, even your own work, you kind of have a outsider perspective of it, when you read it after taking a long break from it. So yeah, it's fun to see it again and dive back into it again.
Are there any challenges taking it from the web comic format and preparing it for the print?
No, those challenges happened back probably in 2011 and 12, 13 when I first converted it from the web. But I really tried at the very start to make it as a comic, an actual graphic novel. And so when I put it online, I was explicit about like this is made for print. It's just so it's not maybe it's not super readable online because you're looking at a double page spread, but it's intended for print. That's my goal with this. And so I think it was pretty easy to convert. It was just learning the printing process because I didn't know how to self-publish very much at that time. So learning to raise funds, learning the self-publishing process, learning how to, do I need to convert it from RGB to CMYK, all that type of stuff, and had a crash course in it. And now I feel like I'm pretty confident with it years later. But yeah, it was. Now it's pretty much ready to go. Like we did some new extra content, and I made new covers and stuff like that. But beyond that, it's pretty much it's the same book, but just put into one nice, beautiful volume, one oversized volume instead of having to buy two separate books now. So I did print it as a paperback as well at one point, and so yeah, it's like this is the fifth printing or something like that. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you got your dream job of working for DreamWorks. Did that influence the book any, or did
Um,
your comic
if
books vice versa? Did your storytelling through reMIND influence whatever your job was at?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I think, well, I know my comic book storytelling influenced my work there because it was a big part of my portfolio to get into DreamWorks. And I worked on Kung Fu Panda 1, 2, and 3. And on the third movie, they basically said, hey, can you redesign these sequences using like the way you think through comics, and make it feel like one of your comics. And so I ended up doing the opening sequence to Kung Fu Panda 3, like the whole sequence, and I just did it as if I was making a comic, and it was action packed and whatever. And they really were thrilled with the end result of it, and yeah, they almost stuck exactly to what I created for that. And I worked on the whole movie too, but that was one of the things that was heavily influenced by my comic book, uh, I, the way I make comics. As far as um, has DreamWorks influenced my comics? When you see the first pages of reMIND, they're very washed out and like simple colors, simple color washes. And then as you get to the end of the the book, the 200-300 pages in, you see the colors get a lot more rich and more confident. And that's just because I learned a lot about color theory working at DreamWorks. And so it kind of just naturally found its way into the book. And surprisingly, it fits really well with the story as well. It fits to the narrative of the story nicely, looking back on it, even though it wasn't the plan. It wasn't the plan that I just make it better color wise. So yeah, so it definitely influenced it, but the story itself was pretty much nailed down years and years before I started DreamWorks. Yeah, and since then, yeah, I worked at DreamWorks for about 7 years, and then I left, and just to work on comics full time because of the success of reMIND and the other comics that I've been working on. So, and they've all been independent comics, all indie published stuff,
Mhm.
self-published until now. Now it's we'll see how this goes, being actually published now.
Yeah, kind of talk about your uh, thing through Titan. How did that? Did they just kind of approach you about it, or were you putting feelers out, or
um, no, I've I've kind of like put it on the back burner. I've always tried to hold on to the rights of my own comics, and just my idea was if I just make a library of comics that I control, eventually I'll be able to license them in different ways. And
Mhm.
for the most part, that's been kind of what's been happening. It's just been a slower process than I thought. One of my next series has a movie option, and I've convert one of my drawing books has been translated in a couple different languages. reMIND was actually translated into German and published by Tokyo Pop as well in the past, the German version. So I just had this idea that okay, I don't know what to do with it anymore. I don't know if it's run its course, but I have to just focus on the next books. And then
Mhm.
some friends of mine, who created this digital distributor called Macroverse. We've been friends for many years now, and they asked if they could host reMIND and my comics on their platform Macroverse. And so yes, so all my comics are there, and through that relationship with them, they have all these new ideas, and they're like, we have connections with these people, and they're the ones who actually had the relationship with Titan Comics, and then they brought my whole catalog to Titan and said, would you be interested in this? So it's through that partnership with Macroverse that the Titan relationship came to be. And so yeah, so that's the it wasn't me trying to make it happen. It was other people having faith in my books and saying we need to get this out there more. And I'm like, okay, if you think. So it's kind of encouraging. Other people are kind of pushing it forward.
Now
And
I believe you mentioned at the beginning that reMIND was originally kind of created as a for an animation type style project.
mm,
Would that still be something you would like to see the property, you know, evolve into,
yeah,
or do you want to kind of keep it into the comic book space?
well, it was originally written as um, it was originally designed to be an animation. I've always been inspired by Miyazaki's animations, and so I kind of wanted to have it in that kind of not that style necessarily, but in that vein, but with more of a Western mentality, I guess, like and so I always had this dream of doing animation movies, directing animation movies, and I pursued that pretty heavily at one time. Um, and so, but then, just doing it on my own, it took so long that I realized it would be better just to get the ideas out of my head and into book form first. And then if some year I can do animation or someone buys the animation rights or it's optioned or whatever, then great, that's icing on the cake. And so there's always that hope that it can turn into that. And it does seem like it's everything's right on the edge of being very possible. Like my second series um, it's been in a movie option for a while now, and they're all very hopeful, but you know how Hollywood is. It's like nothing's really truly happening until it's on the screen and finished. It can be even finished and they'll still pull the plug on something. So, so we'll see. But if that materializes, then that would be another dream come true. For sure.
So let's talk about your creative process. We'll start with your the art. How do you?
Yeah.
What's your process? Do you work
Process.
traditionally, digitally, kind of a mixture of both?
Yeah, it's a definite mixture. With reMIND, I would draw it all on paper, um, like like this, and I would do the thumbnails and then do blow those up and do it the sketches on. Let me show you. Now I need to plug this back in. So like these are these were, I packaged them to sell, but this is tracing paper where I blew up the sketches and then I went over them a little bit bigger, and
Mhm.
that's with just ink pen. And then I'll take those sketches and I'll blow them up even bigger. And then I'll do what I'm doing in the background and just draw over top of them and do some real nice clean lines with pencil. And then I bring that into Photoshop and I boost the contrast in Photoshop so it kind of looks like ink, but it's still just pencil lines. And then I primarily just color everything in Photoshop. And I use painted textures and just all the little tricks I've learned over the years to just kind of make it look beautiful, but preserve it as a painted look beautiful piece of artwork. And so that was reMIND. That's the process for reMIND. The next books I used ink brush pens because I just wanted to learn that. And so the next series was done completely with ink pens. And then the next series I did was all digital. The next couple books were all digital. I use a Cintiq to do the sketches, and I still do all the thumbnails on paper. But just just to speed up the process, going digitally just it really helps speed it up. And unfortunately, it's like it's so much faster to just be able to fix things and get the results you want. um, and so I think in the future I would like to be able to go back to paper, um, just because there's something really special about being able to sell something physically and having a piece of paper that shows you the real artwork that you can't do with digital. So, but my style is very much a hybrid. I'll use whatever it is, and I usually switch up the technique between books, between series as well, just so it keeps it fun. You know, if I do the same thing too long, then it just gets tiring and boring. And so it's a way to make it exciting for me.
So looking back on, you know, your career and the history with reMIND, what's the biggest thing that you know now that you wish you had known then?
Mm, the biggest thing I wish I would have known. Let's see. You know, I don't know if I don't know if there's too many surprises because I've always kind of been hard-headed with making personal projects and having that being the thing that opens doors. And so I
Hmm.
kind of always knew if I just it's how I got into animation, it's how I got into Hollywood, it's how I got into comics, it's how I got into everything is just by doing a personal project and then doors open with it. It's always unexpected doors though. It's not ever what you expect. But so I kind of knew going in, like if I could just get this done, published in a way that I feel like is the way it should be published, then something will happen. It's just I don't know when, I don't know how long it'll take. And sure enough, that's kind of what's been going on. And you know, I could say that it would have been an easier path to like try to pursue something more mainstream, like doing Batman pinups and Spider-Man guest comics and or Star Wars and Lego or whatever it's popular online. I could have built a following faster that way.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't think that that's the way I don't think I would have ever enjoyed that. But I can say that that would have been probably a faster option to go towards a finish line of popularity, you know.
Hmm.
But 15 years later, after finishing reMIND, uh, I feel like it's in a pretty good place now that I was hoping for 15 years ago when I started it. And it's just took a long time to. It takes a long time, you know. You have to almost like let people grow up reading your comics,
Hmm.
and then they become professionals, and then they want to carry the torch further. But you have to give it time for people to grow up with your comic, you
Yeah.
know. And so um, I don't think I ever assumed it would be a fast track to popular or success or movies or
Hmm.
anything like that. It's um, I don't know. Yeah, so I don't really feel like I would have done things differently, I guess. Um, there's some things with like I marketed with YouTube and then I kind of self-sabotaged my YouTube channel, which um, I think I would have done that differently. Um, but I don't I don't know, you know. It's a hard question to answer. Hopefully that answers it enough.
Yeah. Yeah. That's. um, and who are your? Where do you kind of go, or who do you go to for inspiration, or to look at how
Hmm.
somebody does their craft, and that you can
Yeah.
that you're able to then go and challenge yourself.
Yeah. I remember really strongly when I was young, when I was like 19, I went to conventions and my favorite artists were Sam Keith and Eric Larson and Chris Bocolo and Todd McFarlane. And Chris Bocolo was one of my favorites. He was making this book called Shade the Changing Man, and I just loved it, everything about it. And so one of his interviews I read really changed my perspective on this. And he was saying something like this back in the 90s, like you can't just go to comics for inspiration. You have to like look at life. You have to go experience things outside of the world you're working in to truly find unique inspiration. And I thought that was the stupidest thing in the world when I first read that. I was like, no, I'm going to learn from the coolest comic artists. But as life has progressed, I really find that to be some of the best, most valuable advice as far as finding a unique style and a unique voice is to just look outside of the field that you're working in. Um, and I think that naturally happened during my career because I worked in storyboards for movies and commercials and TV shows and graphic design and motion design and then in visual development. And through all those different processes, it was a different style, different design, different influences that people were trying to pull together. And I would usually have to study these influences, whether it's Chinese art or Japanese manga, or just going outside and getting references from nature or different parts of the world. And through that, I realized like that's where the true inspiration comes from, just like Chris said. And so I really embrace that now. Like I don't really look at comics or, or 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 even movies for inspiration much anymore. I just try to experience a life and do interesting things as much as I can. And there's inspiration all around you. I think, looking outside and looking at a tree can be super inspiring. Or looking at the sky, wow, you end up putting some of that inspiration into your comics. And so, and yeah, there's the technical side of things. You need to learn how to draw something technically, but that all just comes with time and practice. But true inspiration is like, yeah, it's outside of the field that you're working in, is what I would say.
So, as we begin to wrap up here, is there anything else that you wanted to make sure that people know about the upcoming book, or anything you know about you, anything you have in the works, or
Yeah. Well, I would say there's a lot of people who've loved reMIND over the years, and they've begged me to make an omnibus hardcover edition of it, and because these you can't find anymore other than used copies, and so it's finally here. I'm excited to finally have the omnibus edition, and if you are a reMIND fan, I think there's very good news on the horizon. I can't say what it is, but definitely it's a good time to be a reMIND fan. So that's probably it.
well, if you'd like to give one last kind of pitch for the book, and
Yeah.
where people can find more about you, or if you're brave enough to be on social media.
Oh, I used to be on social media a lot, but I just don't go on there much anymore. But if you go to coffeetablecomics.com, that's kind of my online business card, and I kind of give a little, get a little information on all my books and where to buy them. And I also have a Patreon account, which is kind of a more behind the scenes, and I actually treat it as a blog, and so people know more about me there and know what's going on there more than other places. I don't post a whole lot though, but yeah, the Patreon is patreon.com/Jason Brubaker. The website is coffeetablecomics.com, and you won't really find me much on social media anymore. And yeah, but this is all coming out through Titan Comics, so it's all going to be accessible through them now. So, and hopefully at your local comic store as well.
Yeah. So, and it comes out, I believe, like mid-October. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah, I know the date kind of moved around a little bit because I was taking my time getting the cover drawn. But yeah, I think it's going to be mid-October now.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time this afternoon to chat with us about reMIND, and if in the future when you have other projects you'd like to talk about, you're welcome back, and we'll catch up about how this one went, and what you have on the horizon.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks, and have a great day.